we love food, colored green, bell peppers and long string beans, pickles, celery, cucumbers too. All these foods are good for you.
Welcome to Storytime Cooks, where we learn about food through books. Today we're going to be reading Curious George Goes to School, and some of us have just started school as well. Never really thought about going to school when you were a monkey, but George does. And this book is by Margaret and H.A. Rays. Let's see what happens to George when he goes to school. It was open house at George's school. So the man with the yellow hat had come to school with George. And you can see they're going into the school, and he's got on his bright yellow outfit and his yellow hat. "I want to speak to your teacher," the man said. "Wait for me, George, and don't get into trouble." And that's what the man with the yellow hat always tells George. Sometimes George doesn't listen very well, though. George was standing in front of the art room. He opened the door and peeked in. Mr. Williams, the art teacher, was cleaning up. "Hello, George," he said. "My students will be coming by with their parents today to show them their work." And there's pictures hanging around in the art room. Do you think George is going to be a good little monkey? Or do you think he might get into trouble? I don't know. Let's find out. The walls of the art room were covered with the students' paintings. There were paintings of dancers and farmers and race car drivers and ice skaters. There's the race car one, and here's the ice skater. There's just all kinds of paintings for George to look at. On one wall, there was a chart with the names of all the children. Each name had a star beside it except for Alice. "Poor Alice," said Mr. Williams. "She said she left her painting on my desk, but I can't find it. Wonder where Alice's painting went." "Here, George, why don't you paint a picture while you wait for your friend?" So George began to paint. What kind of picture do you think George would paint? I don't know. Let's see if we can figure out what he's going to paint. "Keep painting, George," said Mr. Williams, "and I'll be right back." And off he went. George kept painting, but it was starting to get very warm in the classroom. And his painting looks like he's starting a picture of maybe a palm tree. Let's see what else he puts on his picture. On a nearby table, there is a fan. And remember, George said he was starting to get hot. If we turn the fan on, maybe that would cool things off. So George turned it on. But as soon as he did, the fan blew the paintings off the walls and all over the room. There are pictures of artwork flying all over the place. "George," cried Mr. Williams, running into the room, "look what you've done." Poor George, he didn't mean to get into trouble. And sometimes that's the way it is with us. We don't mean to get in trouble, but sometimes things just happen. Mr. Williams turned off the fan. "You better help me clean up, George," he said. George picked the papers up off the floor. Some were under Mr. Williams' desk. You can see they're on the chair, they're on the floor, they're everywhere. One was stuck between the desk and the wall. When George pulled it out, it was covered with dust, as if it had been there for a long time. That's interesting because he had just turned the fan on and the pictures just flew off. So they really shouldn't have been covered with dust. It was a painting of a little girl riding a horse. "That is Alice's missing painting," cried Mr. Williams. "Now I can give Alice a star." So even though George got into a little bit of trouble by turning the fan on and making the pictures fly over the room, he had done something good. He had found Alice's picture. When the paintings were all hanging on the walls again, the students and their parents arrived. And there was Alice's painting, and there was George's painting right beside it. Remember, I said I thought George was drawing a palm tree, and that's what it looks like. We don't have these kinds of trees here, but remember, little monkeys live in the jungle, so that was the kind of trees that George knew. And there he is. He drew a picture of himself right beside the tree. Now that Alice's picture was hanging up and had been found, she had a gold star on the chart like all the other children. "Thank you for finding my painting, George," said Alice. "I like your painting too. You should have a gold star too." George's name isn't on the list because he wasn't in that class. Remember, he was just there visiting while his friend was talking to his teacher. But guess what? The art teacher gave George a great big gold star. And Mr. Williams thought that George must have deserved a star too. Well, today we're going to make a gold star. I think George probably liked the color gold because monkeys' favorite foods are typically bananas. And what color are they? They're kind of gold, aren't they? On the outside anyway. Remember, when we're eating fruits and vegetables, we always need to make sure we wash those as well as washing our hands before we get started. So we have an apple here that we've washed. We've already done a little work beforehand, and this is something you would need an adult to help you with. So you're going to wash your apple. You can do that yourself, but then we're going to take our apple and we're going to cut it in half. And when we cut it in half, we see the inside of the apple where there are the seeds. And I've taken some yellow food coloring or some gold food coloring. You could actually use whatever color you wanted. And I'm going to rub this apple into the food coloring and get it all covered. Food coloring is kind of like paint, but it's the kind of paint we can eat. So we've got this nice and covered in this gold paint or the yellow food coloring. And then we're going to take that and we're going to stamp it on a piece of paper. And you could use a piece of paper towel or you could use a piece of art paper. And guess what it's going to make? Remember what George got when he found that picture and what the children got when they were able to, when they did their artwork? That's right. They got a star. And we can make a star by using that center apple. Because when you look at that, it actually kind of looks like a star. And remember, since we used food coloring, we can still eat this apple. You could actually wash it off if you wanted to not get food coloring all over you, but it's safe to eat. It's not going to hurt you. So remember, each time when you get an apple, if you cut it this direction, there's a star inside. And you guys all deserve stars. I hope you have a good day and we'll have some fun playing with your food and enjoying it as we continue to learn about food through Storytime Cooks as we read our books.
We love food colored green, bell peppers and long string beans, pickles, celery, cucumbers too.